Good afternoon, and welcome to another United Partners for Human Services workshop. My name is Justin Fitzpatrick, and I serve as the Membership and Communications Manager here at United Partners for Human Services. I am joined by our admin coordinator, Jamie Lynn Carter, as well as our Director for Strategic Initiatives, LaShawn Gordon. We're so excited to welcome you all into Wholeness Unleashed. And through this presentation today, that will have a blend of insightful discussions, experiential activities, and collaborative exercises. Participants will embark on a path towards self-discovery, fulfillment, and sustainable well-being, as Wholeness Unleashed is designed to be a transformative workshop experience where the boundaries between personal and professional well-being blur and a journey towards wholeness begins. So without further ado, I will introduce Dr. Carla Sapp, the clinical director at SG Mental Health Counseling, and today's presenter for us this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Justin. I was trying to make sure I came off mute. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen first so that I have that done, and then I know that I'm good to go. All right, can everybody see my screen? Thumbs up. All right, good deal. So hello, everyone. As Justin said, I am Dr. Carla Sapp, but I am probably one of the most informal doctors you'll probably ever meet. I'm just Carla. I always tell people that. I am so not all into the extra doctor and all of this stuff. I'm just Carla, so please feel free to just refer to me as Carla, and we will have a great time. I am super excited to be here with you all today. I'm thankful for United Partners for Human Services for reaching out and inviting me to do this presentation. As I was telling Justin, as we were kind of going over some things at the beginning, this is typically a presentation that I would do in person. And given, the unique world that we live in where we can do things virtually now, I've kind of pared it down a little bit just for that purpose. And so there won't be as many activities just given kind of the medium in which we're using. However, at the end of this presentation, if you are wanting a copy of the presentation, there are a couple of links that are inside of this presentation. We'll provide those links for you as well so that you can have the material, access to any recordings, things of that nature. So feel free to reach out and ask. And my information will be at the end of this presentation as well. And so with that, we're going to start with Wholeness Unleashed, cultivating holistic well-being. So I started this presentation off with my story. And I always start this presentation off with my story because this whole idea of wellness, lifestyle choices and wellness, and being in this realm of work is very personal for me. And for me in this journey, getting to this place that I am, I've realized that for a lot of people to truly understand the trajectory and to truly start to really think about how does this work for me and why is wellness so important, being able to have that connection. And so when I started this you started looking at the wellness idea and lifestyle choices I had incorporated into my work. It was in 2014 during my dissertation phase. And during that time, I was working in a very hostile environment in the sense that not necessarily the co-workership was hostile, but the type of environment that I worked in, which was a correctional setting, hostile, right? I saw a lot of my co-workers who were experiencing a lot of wellness challenges, working extra hours, just a whole lot of stuff going on, not spending time with their families, shift work. And then, sometimes they were working 16 hours because they had to stay over. They're not resting properly, not eating properly. And it kind of became my story too, right? I started to think about these things over the course of the past couple of years. And so a lot of my stories from the beaten path to my health journey started with all of these degenerative habits that I had. Eating late, snacking throughout the day, not really eating properly like I should. When I did eat, run to McDonald's to get a, thing of fries with a Coke and a burger, be happy, go to Chick-fil-A, get that 12-piece nugget with those fries, that brownie that's oh so great, all those things, food I should not be eating, but it was great for me. Making decisions that were kind of impulsive, short-term, drinking a lot of sugary drinks, not going to my doctor's appointments like I should, all those different pieces. But even more so, realizing that I was struggling a lot with anxiety. I was always worrying about things. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was sacrificing my sleep, especially during my dissertation phase. Like I'd go to bed some nights at like 12 o'clock, be up at 3 o'clock, writing again before I have to go to work, whenever that moment hit me. And so all those pieces were playing a part in that, which then prompted me to start experiencing a lot of health issues. Started finding myself having chronic pain, and even in that was living kind of like this sedentary lifestyle. Really wasn't in, actively involved in my life. It was kind of go to work, come home, do, dissertation, take care of kids, whatever. But I wasn't truly active in my life. And when I did decide I wanted to get active was kind of when things started to really fall apart for me. And so what happened, back then, I was having a lot of I decided my daughter, she was a runner, so I would run with her. And we did a 10K. I'll never forget. February 2016, we did back at home in Georgia, what's called the Love Chocolate 10K. And my daughter's, again, she's a runner, so she starts, she's going. I'm just like, as long as I can survive and make it cross the finish line, whether it's, in 2 hours, or if they have to carry me across at 5 hours later because somebody found me on somewhere sitting down, like I'm not doing this anymore. I just wanted to get across the line and get a medal. And I did, felt really good when I finished up. My daughter, of course, left me and didn't look back. But that afternoon, I started to swell. I started to experience a lot of chronic pain. I had joint inflammation. And just so happened, I had a doctor's appointment coming up for my regular health checkup, for my yearly. Well, I'll go to my yearly, tell them what was happening, and on my birthday, February 24th of 2016, I got a phone call. And that phone call from my doctor's office informed me at that moment that my lab work had come back and they were going to be sending me to a rheumatologist. I can't say that word too well, but they were sending me there because my lab work showed that I possibly may have lupus. And it was like, okay, where did this come from? Well, come to find out, the running, here I go trying to become active in my life. The running has now catapulted my health issues. So I go from, here I'm having chronic pain now constantly. I'm experiencing inflammation. My weight starts to fluctuate here, there. I'm experiencing bloating. But at the same time, I'm still practicing all these degenerative habits, right? Not only that, I find myself overscheduling myself, trying to extend myself way more than I should, not sleeping like I should, and my health continually declined. Was diagnosed with the autoimmune disorder, two of them to be exact, lupus, as well as I was also diagnosed with Graves' disease, and still, just never took care of myself. It is what it is. And then COVID happens. And when COVID happens, everything went completely wrong with my health. I ended up in the hospital, another autoimmune disorder on top of the other two that I already had. Now I'm having to have surgery. I'm having to have, iron transfusions. All these different pieces are starting to take place. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that I just had not been taking care of myself. I kind of took advantage of the fact that my health was much more important. And so I had to change my entire lifestyle. And that kind of took me back to my dissertation and the work that I had done when it came to correctional staff and habits they had, and started looking at the fact that, my nutrition had to change. I had to start eating healthy. I had to start making sure that I was getting proper rest, taking care of myself, involving myself with fitness habits, which then led me on this journey of becoming, practicing yoga and then becoming certified as a yoga teacher. But then, practicing other things, breathing and meditation, finding these positive stressors that I could utilize, positive habits I could utilize in my life. And it got me to a place where now I'm feeling more energetic. I feel really good. I'm relaxed. I'm focused. I'm happy. I'm doing the work that I enjoy. And I feel that it's so important that I share this story because it shows that, I'm not just talking about it because I've read about it, but I've lived this lifestyle. I've been through this process. And so this is where Wholeness Unleashed comes from, and our intentions of being able to just enhance our self-awareness and our personal growth, but then also foster resilience and well-being among individuals and their organizations in which they work. And lastly, but more importantly, being able to cultivate sustainable habits for wholeness. And what you'll see in this presentation as we go further is that there is a specific acronym that kind of goes along with wholeness, and I'll talk about it in shortly, where it comes from, how I developed it. And feel free, again, if there's questions, feel free to ask questions throughout the time, and Justin will definitely let me know that you have questions. So as we begin, I want to take a moment and start with the quest. And the quest is our ability to embark on a self-awareness journey. And with this, I'm going to ask that each of you kind of take a moment to kind of take in a deep breath and soften your eyes, kind of close your eyes, and kind of become kind of centered in one with yourself. And so as you do that, I want you to enter the realm of your imagination with me, and join me on a journey of introspection as we explore the concept of self-awareness through imagery of two distinct rooms: the room of wellness as well as the chamber of wholeness. So in this space that you're in, as you close your eyes, I want you to envision yourself standing at a crossroad. And at this crossroads, you're going to find two doors, both of them very magnificent. To your left is the grand room of wellness. In that grand room of wellness, you're going to find that door in it with a soft glow of tranquility. And to your right, there's this exquisite chamber of wholeness that's radiating a warm light of unity. I invite you to now walk up to the door of the room of wellness. And as you enter it, I want you to feel a sense of calm washing over you. Notice the gentle hues of blue and green that adorn the walls, symbolizing peace and vitality. In this room of wellness, you'll notice that the air is filled with the subtle sense of calming lavender and invigorating eucalyptus. Take a deep breath and let the soothing atmosphere envelop you like a gentle embrace, clearing your mind and easing the tension from your body. While in the room of wellness, take a moment to reflect on your current state of wellness. How do you nurture your physical, mental, and emotional health? Are there areas of imbalance that require your attention? Embrace the sensations of well-being that surround you and feel gratitude for the care that you give to yourself. Now I invite you to exit the room of wellness and cross the threshold into the chamber of wholeness. As you enter the chamber of wholeness, you're greeted by an array of warm golden light that envelops you like a cocoon of unity and integration. The walls are adorned with the symbols of interconnectedness, reminding you of the importance of embracing all aspects of yourself. I invite you to sit in the chamber of wholeness and contemplate the concept of wholeness. How do you define completeness within yourself? Explore the different aspects of yourself: the light and the shadow, your strengths, and even your vulnerabilities. Are there parts of your being that require acknowledgement and acceptance? Recognize the beauty and strength that comes from accepting your entirety. Feel a sense of integration and alignment as you embrace your whole self. Now, as you prepare to leave these sacred spaces, take a moment to compare and contrast the room of wellness and the chamber of wholeness. Consider how these two aspects, wellness and wholeness, intertwine and complement each other on your journey to self awareness. When you are ready, open your eyes and carry the insights gained from this visualization into your daily life. Remember that true self awareness comes from recognizing the importance of cultivating and nurturing your well being while striving for inner wholeness. Welcome back. So, I have some thoughts to ponder for you, having done that visualization. And having explored the rooms that represents wellness and wholeness, what would you say wellness means to you? Would anybody like to share?
To me, it means clarity, being able to think clear.
Okay. So being able to think clear. Thank you, Ashley. Anyone else?
We have a comment in the chat. They said being whole spiritually, physically, and emotionally, just really alignment through all factors and all facets.
Thank you, LaShawn. Okay. What does that state? So being able to think clear. So when we think about wellness, we think about, being trying to get LaShawn's statement, being whole spiritually, physically, and emotionally. But then also, as Ashley said, having the ability to think clear, being able to achieve a sense of clarity in your life, right? And so being able to then reflect on what wholeness entails. If wellness is thinking clear and having this sense of wellness from a perspective of physical, Shonda said being content, being whole spiritually, physically, and emotionally. What does wholeness entails for you, and how does it differ from wellness?
I feel like being well is I guess, the action once you discover what wholeness is. I feel like you have to put wholeness before wellness because wellness is the state of being well, while wholeness is the state of understanding what makes you full or what makes you content, kind of to agree with Shonda's point there.
Mhm. So understanding the state of being versus being able to kind of the state of doing. In the sense of in order to be able to be well, I have to be whole because and we're gonna kind of Justin kind of jumped a little bit ahead because there's a quote that's going to come up in just a second that kind of goes with it. So he probably, he had a chance to see these slides ahead of time, so he's a little prepared there. But being able to kind of understand that, when we think about wholeness and we think about wellness, wellness is kind of that state of doing. It's the action. What are we doing in order to achieve this wellness? In that wellness, it's about becoming whole. And what does whole being? Whole is being that state of that's that state of being that we're in all the facets. I know some of you mentioned, being content, being able to have this sense of fulfillment, not just having this sense of fulfillment, there's that purpose and meaning that kind of comes along with it from a spiritual aspect, but then looking at other aspects of my life that also goes beyond just the physical aspect. Because most times when we think about wellness, a lot of times most people have always thought about wellness from that sense of, that physical sense, as long as I'm, well with my health, physical health, and I'm okay, but it's so much more encompassing. And for time, go ahead.
Yeah, I was struggling with like still understanding wholeness versus wellness. So I think what you just shared was helpful for me. And I think like for me, the idea of going back to the first question of what does wellness mean to you, I think something about like being able to show up for others in a way that I'm proud of or like excited about and yeah, showing up for others, but like taking like the idea of like filling your cup first with things that fulfill you and make you well and whole, I guess, so you can show up for others.
Thank you, Janelle, for sharing that. And that is very, very much true. And being able to understand with wellness and with wholeness that when we think about it, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so many times for so long and lots of times in our lives, what we find ourselves doing is we find ourselves trying to extend. I kind of talked about that in the beginning where I've overextended myself several times before, which then takes away from me being able to truly take care of myself. And so understanding that in that, and I'm going to talk about wholeness a lot more shortly when I give you an entire model that kind of goes along with it, but being able to see it from that perspective and that wellness is an aspect of me being whole. And in order for me to be whole, I have to be well. So with that, I have this quote, and this quote kind of goes along with what we were just talking about. To truly embrace wellness is to prioritize your overall well-being, cultivating a healthy balance of mind, body, and spirit to achieve a state of harmony and vitality that enriches every facet of your life. What are your thoughts when you hear that statement? Don't be afraid to talk. We're family here today. We can talk.
I mean, I think wellness encompasses everything. So, when you look at the different domains that make up a person, I think, if any of the domains are out of balance, then that's not true wellness.
So wellness isn't just physical.
No, spiritually, mentally.
Okay.
Physically, and usually, for example, if the physical domain is not intact, the other areas are usually out of whack.
Out of whack. Mm-hmm. Which then leads us to the power, and for time purposes, I'm going to kind of move a little quicker. But it kind of leads us to the power of holistic well-being and thinking about that. So kind of going with what LaShawn was just saying, when you start to think about wellness, and a lot of times we hear about wellness. And so here we are working towards this power of holistic well-being. And there's a difference between being well and having well-being, which our well-being lends to us becoming more whole, as wellness being one of those aspects of it. What we recognize is that this connection, this interconnectedness of the mind, body, and the soul ultimately doesn't just impact us individually, but it impacts our organizational success too, because we are a part of the organization. The organization can't function without us. So case in point, I told a coworker the other day, if you're not taking care of yourself, what good are you when you show up to work for us? Because you can't function at your best, right? And so in that understanding that in that interconnectedness of the mind, body, and the soul, it ultimately impacts both individually and organizational success. And what this interconnectedness ultimately suggests is that the thoughts, the feelings, and the beliefs that we have has an influence on our physiological processes, and that it highlights how our bodies have to work together. So our body is not just the physical body. We have to think about our body from the physical aspect, from the spiritual aspect, but then mentally, because they all work together. Thoughts, feelings, kind of in this triad, going to kind of count some psychology, this whole idea of my thoughts impact my feelings impact my thoughts, and my feelings impact how I respond. And so in all of that, if I'm not taking care of myself, or I'm having these negative thoughts, I'm involving myself in negative habits, more than likely I'm going to have more negative feelings, which is then going to cause me to respond in a more adverse, negative way. And so it's very significant when it comes to our overall health and our well-being, in the sense that it allows us to be able to look at how are we experiencing life, and not just how we're experiencing life. What are some of the impacts in us experiencing life that's happening? Poor health, poor digestive system, increased anxiety, experiencing bouts of depression, having autoimmune issues, cardiovascular issues, digestive problems, and other health issues. And so the power of the holistic well-being then helps us to understand that when when our health, kind of go back to my story with the degenerative habits, when we're engaging in these degenerative habits, we're not taking care of ourselves, we find ourselves experiencing poor health, we find ourselves having all these health issues. But when we start to look at, okay, this is how it's impacting my mind, my body, and my soul, and I need to make changes, we start to be able to look at how can we boost our immune function. How can we improve our mental health and our emotional well-being? How can we look at being able to increase our level of resiliency and being able to reduce that stress that we're experiencing and prevent these chronic illnesses that we're experiencing? While some of them are genetic, we also look at this piece of, a lot of times it's more environmental. It's about kind of where we're placing ourselves and how we're taking care of ourselves, that kind of expedites some of the chronic illnesses that we start to experience, because our body isn't able to process all of the negative trauma that it's holding on to, the negative stress that it's holding on to, and it has to do something with it. And so it starts to fight itself. When we get sick, it's because our body's breaking down, because it's kind of holding all these things in. And so just looking at, that mind-body connection, and that they're not two separate entities, but they're one and the same working together. And so there are some pillars of well-being, and this comes from more positive psychology, in the sense that with positive psychology, what they found is that there are areas of our lives that we want to be able to focus on, and be able to look at. So Martin Seligman, when he talked about the happiness and well-being, understanding them, they have wellness and these well-being. So we have positive emotion, which is our happiness and lasting happiness. So that joy and satisfaction. What brings us that? What allows us to have these positive emotions? How are we surrounding ourselves with positive people, utilizing affirmations? But more importantly, not just utilizing affirmations and being positive, but how do we experience happiness in our lives? What are those things that we find gives us joy, and authentic joy? Not, well, I just went to work and I was happy because I got a paycheck, but I went to work, and kind of like Janelle was talking about earlier, and so was Justin, it's fulfilling to me. How am I spending time with my family and it's fulfilling to me? Which kind of leads into that engagement piece. And the way that Seligman he calls it PERMA. And so you'll see positive emotion is the P. And then the next E is engagement, being at one with and absorbed in the experience. And so I'm not just, when I'm at work or when I'm with my family, I'm not just kind of with my family and we're sitting down eating dinner together, but we're all playing on our phones, but we're actually engaged with one another. We're spending time, we're talking to one another. We're sharing in each other's experiences and engaged with one another. Same with when I'm at work, and not even when I'm at work, when I'm out with my friends and families, when I'm involved in other type of activities. It's about being able to engage myself in a way that I truly value the experience, which then leads to the relationships and the social connections, which is the R. And that's not just our social connections with others, but what is our relationship like with ourselves? What is our relationship like with our community? How are we connected to other people and connected first and foremost to ourselves? Because it's harder for us to connect with others when we're not connected with ourselves. And then those last two, meaning and accomplishment. The meaning kind of it corresponds with the spiritual aspect, in that using what's best inside of you to belong to and serve something bigger than you are. And so in having this meaning in our life, where does this meaning come from? It comes from the work that we do. It comes from us engaging in volunteering activities. And so being able to understand that it's about the larger world and society. It's about having this sense of community involvement, community feeling, whether it be volunteering or if it's, sorority work, fraternity work, um, organizational groups that you can be involved in, but it gives a sense of purpose to your life. But then it leads you to, and the A is the accomplishments. And so being able to feel that there has been some sense of achievement, some sense of competency, or mastery over various skills that you've developed throughout your life. A lot of times, some of it's tangible, some of it is just being able to have that fulfilling, that sense of fulfillment that I did this, it was able to help other people. Sometimes the accomplishment isn't in the form of monetary gifts or in the form of a certificate. Sometimes it's, and more importantly, it's what I feel on the inside of me. So it's more internal, just knowing that I did this on behalf of, I did this out of the goodness of my heart on behalf of others, and it helped them. And so when we think about well-being and its contributors, what research has found is that 40% of well-being comes from intentional activities. That's a huge point when you start to look at, while 50% is kind of set point, temperament, kind of genetics, things that we don't have as much control over, just like 10% come from some of our life circumstances that we may have some control, but we may not have some control. 40% of it is our intentional activities. And so almost half of our well-being is up to us to make sure we're doing things to be able to have a sense of positive well-being in our lives. And so what does these intentional activities look like? So 40% of our well-being is intentional activities. It means that we have to engage in new action. So we have to be able to identify what are things that we can do to increase my well-being. What are things that how do I assess myself? Kind of going back to that embarking on a self-awareness journey. Where are areas in my life that I can improve on? And why do I need to improve on them? What are some habits that I can possibly look at starting to form, some routines and patterns that I can start to do that would aid in being able to reduce the stress that I'm experiencing in my life and increase the sense of fulfillment, the sense of purpose that I'm having in my life? Not only is it 40% of the well-being, but then we also look at the fact that these routines ultimately become more of a mental flossing for us. And so it increases our well-being. We start to have this higher sense of well-being that kind of that's correlated with our life satisfaction. So we find ourselves more satisfied with the life we're living. We're more involved in learning activities, being able to retain information. We start to find ourselves becoming a lot more creative because we're a lot more in tune with ourselves at that point. And so it's not about necessarily always being attuned with others, but having this internal sense, being able to understand that when I'm working on my well-being, when I'm looking at from a holistic aspect and knowing that all these pieces come together, it's about me being able to internalize it and being able to look at how does this help? How does this help me? How does this make me feel? If it's not making you feel good, then maybe we need to do something a little different. If it's causing you to feel worse or you're having even more chronic issues, it's not as healthy for you. So you're wanting it to be healthy because it allows you to then start to kind of cultivate this sense of resilience. And it's been shown ultimately the more your well-being increases, the likelihood that you will experience more positive health as well as your mental health. And so this is where, as I was saying, we were going to talk about the whole and what does whole mean. And so back in 2014, when I was working on my dissertation, and working on my dissertation, I stumbled upon, and I used a different model. I used a model by Myers-Sweeney and Whitmer, which was it's called the 5-factor wellness inventory is the model in the assessment that I used. And while it was a great inventory, I felt like it was missing something. And in it missing something, kind of went back in 2017 and was rereading my dissertation as I was going through my own medical issues. And it was there. And it was so interesting because I remember reading my dissertation and thinking it was here the whole time and I didn't even recognize it. And so I started working at that point on developing this model. And it's a paradigm of well-being that's called the whole self. And it's based on both positive psychology, which is founded by Martin Seligman, as well as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And at its core, what it does is it focuses on the development of the whole person to include all aspects of what I consider to be our individual selves. And so it's not that just well-being is the absence of illness, which a lot of times when people think about wellness is as long as I don't have any health issues, as long as I'm taking care of my physical health, I am good, I am well. The reality is that holistic well-being and wholeness is not just the absence of illness, but that it's a state of being in complete physical, emotional well-being. And so all of those come together. And so I know LaShawn kind of talked about um earlier, or was it LaShawn, or I can't remember, but just talked about how it's kind of almost an integration of various aspects of our lives. And that in order for that to happen, we have to be able to look at the individual aspects of our lives and how they contribute to the bigger aspect of our lives, which is where you get the cells from. So this paradigm ultimately emphasizes the interrelatedness and the connectedness of the various aspects of our individual selves. And I'm going to break them down in a few minutes with and their lifestyle choices with our overall whole self. And so in the components of wholeness, if we start to think about what does whole mean, because I told y'all we would talk about this. And what does whole mean? So whole actually stands for wellness, happiness, optimism, satisfaction with life experiences. And so the L is actually the life experiences. And then the last E is empowerment. And so with that, the wellness component actually focuses on the physical health to include exercise, nutrition, sleep, stress management, doctor's appointments, things of that nature. And it recognizes that physical wellness is, and physical health is the foundation of well-being. So if we're not physically well, then we can't be well in any other aspect as is. So it encourages individuals to take care of their bodies, but at the same time understanding that that's only one aspect of your being able to function in a more optimal manner and feel your best. And then you have happiness, which is your H, which focuses on one's emotional well-being and the experiences of positive emotions such as joy, contentment, excitement, you name it, pleasure, any of those words that when you think of happiness, they kind of come to mind. And it encourages you to cultivate these positive emotions in your life and work towards a sense of fulfillment. And with optimism, which is your O, it focuses on the belief that life has a purpose. There's not one life here in this world that does not have a purpose. We may not always know our purpose, but every life has a purpose, and that there's meaning to it, and that we have the capacity to truly cultivate the life that we desire. And then our life experiences, satisfaction, looks at just kind of pursuit of goals, meaningful relationships, having personal growth in our lives. And then the last part is the development of the empowerment. And so being able to kind of develop this sense of self-efficacy in our lives, being able to make choices, take actions, and encourage individuals to be responsible for their own well-being. And so what it shows is that wellness and well-being is more of a dynamic process that kind of works together as a whole. And with the concept of self, with these domains, with the concept of self, it's ultimately they're showing that we're multidimensional as individuals. And as multidimensional individuals, we have to realize that we have individual selves that are interrelated and that impact who we are as a whole being. And so our wellness, our happiness, our optimism, our satisfaction with life, and our ability to empower ourselves has a lot to do with all of these individual selves. And while they're not going to always be in tandem with each other, they do contribute to our ability to become completely whole. And so in that, with the whole self, there are various domains that I was able to identify. And some of them are really self-explanatory, like the emotional self is cultivating emotional awareness, regulation, and resilience. Our economic self is our ability to, it's about achieving financial stability, security, freedom, having those financial goals, developing a budget, housing, things, having, managing our debt. our spiritual self. And when we typically talk about wellness, a lot of times we talk about mind, body, soul, and that spiritual self is there. But then we also understand that all of these aspects of ourselves are just as important, and they all contribute. But then our spiritual self is having that sense of purpose, being able to find that sense of meaning. And then our occupational self being able to have that satisfaction and fulfillment at work, but not just having a satisfaction and fulfillment at work, being able to have positive work-life balance, being able to have those boundaries that separate work from home so that we're not taking the two together. Of course, social self is that connection with others, having meaningful relationships with friends, with family members, with our co-workers, being able to engage in positive conflict resolution. But then, and we've talked about the physical self, and our avocational self. I always tell people that's just your leisure. What is it that you do for leisure time? What are your hobbies? What are activities that you want to engage in? Gardening, reading a book, listening to music, dancing, new activities. And then this one piece here, the community self, I feel like that's so important because a lot of times people don't even recognize how important it is to have a sense of community and be involved in the community. And that's where that sense of belonging really comes from. Being able to be involved in civic activities, contributing to the well-being of others. And then lastly, our intellectual self, which is just continuing to expand our knowledge, that self-awareness that we have of ourselves, which then ultimately is our overarching whole self, which encapsulate, the other domains. And so what it shows is that the idea that in order for us to be whole, there has to be an integration and an interconnection of all of these areas, or all of these cells of our lives. And that if we neglect one, we're not able to truly achieve optimal well-being, because while they work together, they're not in tandem, but we have to be working on all of these aspects in order to be able to get to that place where we are achieving a sense of wholeness. And so the motto, is that the whole are in the parts. And this is a thought for you to ponder as you're thinking about this model. The whole are in the parts are in the whole, therefore reciprocally influencing one another. And so we think about our individual selves. Our whole self is a representation of our individual selves. And our individual selves ultimately impact how we become whole. And so therefore they influence one another. So I can't be whole if I'm not working on those individual pieces. And I can't therefore those individual pieces can't be worked on and maintained if I'm not achieving a sense of wholeness in my life. Any thoughts so far? I'm trying to make sure I kind of stay with time at the same time. Okay. So with that, I've included in here, and we're going to make sure you get a copy of the link so that you'll have the link. But if you click the link right now, you'll be able to download the assessment that also corresponds with this. And it's the Becoming Whole assessment, where all domains, there's questions that you can answer. There's a scoring key at the end where you'll be able to kind of look at where you are on this spectrum. And so what are some strategies to unleash our wholeness? If we start to think about that, we want to look at some sustainable individual holistic habits that allows us to unleash our wholeness. And in unleashing our wholeness, and that's why I named this Unleashing Wholeness, because being able to move from that idea of just being well to being whole. And so this is how we're going to unleash our wholeness. And it comes in a variety of different settings. So we have mindfulness practices. Mindfulness practices includes breathing techniques, meditation, yoga, Thai, you name it, a variety of different things that you can do. And I have a couple of examples that you'll be able to use. Engaging in regular exercise, walking, jogging, going to the gym, working out, healthy eating, and not just healthy eating and I eat my 3 meals a day, but being able to think about what foods are healthy for you, what foods do you find when you're, looking at yourself, having this awareness of yourself. So if I know that eating a burger ultimately makes me feel really sick and heavy at the end, it may be good for me, but it may not be healthy for me. And so knowing the difference between the two, but then also looking at, am I just eating and just rushing through my eating? Am I engaging in mindful eating practices? Am I being very conscious of how I'm eating, what I'm eating, where I'm eating, things of that nature? And then adequate sleep. And, people, a lot of times it's like, oh, well, I just go get in bed at night. And that's great, but are you sleeping through the night? Are you waking up in the middle of the night? Do you find yourself really anxious when it comes to sleep? What are some practices that you're doing, or you find that you're doing before you go to bed? Are you still playing on your phone before you go to sleep, which then impacts your ability to go to sleep? Are you rushing and cleaning up the house before you go to bed, and then when you get into bed you find that you're really restless, you're tired, but you're restless and you can't fall asleep? So being able to kind of assess those things. Connection and community. Who's your support system? How often are you spending time with your family and friends? Are you making that a priority? Personal growth and development. What are areas of your life that you're working on? How are you working on those? From a professional standpoint, are you attending workshops, programs? Are you involved in civic activities? Are you reading books? Are you attending, personal webinars that kind of, talks about different areas of life that you can continue to improve in? Are you coming to a presentation today on wellness and how to unleash your wholeness? What are some habits that you can use? And then your self-care practices. How are you just taking care of yourself overall? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis to just make sure you're taking care of yourself? And so with that, I have, in order to be able to give more of an idea of the various types of lifestyle and wellness sustainable habits, I created a couple of years ago what's called the Glow Up, which is the Good Habits, Longevity, Optimal Health, Wellness, Uplifting Practices Challenge that individuals can utilize. It's a 13-week session, 13-week, but you can do it. I just kind of created it by week. But in it, if you click this link, if you actually click right now on the picture, it'll actually take you, and you'll be able to download your copy as well. But we'll send you a link to it as well. But it goes over all those different areas. So there's mindfulness practices, there's activities for you to do for mindful eating, there's activities for you to consider when it comes to adequate sleep, professional growth. And so there's different things to do week by week that you can do. I have it actually sitting right here on my desk. And so there's things that you can do on a week-to-week basis for 13 weeks. And again, it doesn't have to be 13 weeks. It can actually be, you can just kind of work through it the way you want to work through it. But it gives you different themes. And so you have a mindful eating theme, a hydration challenge theme, mind-body connection theme, sleep hygiene, positive self-talk, self-care, gratitude, stress management, adventure, wellness, book, mindful movement, social connection, and then reflection and renewal. And so it gives you a lot of activities that you can engage in, as well as journal prompts that you can utilize as different activities that you can also incorporate in your life. And then on this one, it's just breathe. And I always tell that because a lot of times what we fail to realize is breathing is our life force. It is the one thing that always brings us back to the present. Even when we find ourselves being distracted, when we find ourselves overwhelmed with everything going on in the world, we can simply just breathe. And that reminds us, one, that we're still alive, that we're still making progress to whatever goal we have. But more importantly, it just gives us a moment to pause and just be with ourselves. And so on these links, and you can click on those if you want to open them up. But again, we'll make sure you have them for time purposes. If you click on those, these are recordings where I've actually guide you through a conscious breathing exercise, a square box breathing or equal breathing. It can be called either or exercise, the 4-7-8, and the diaphragmatic breathing. And so kind of walk you through that, kind of talk you through it, kind of like we did in the beginning, but instead it's more of a breathing exercise versus a guided visualization. And then I also provided this. This is a activity that I actually created for some of my staff. It's called the Mindful Monday practice. And this one is called Breathe in the Now. And so it's about being able to connect our breath with a personal mantra. One of my mantras is every morning before I get up, I always, as I'm waking up, before I get out the bed, I start off my morning with reminding myself that with ease and grace, I will be able to rise to the challenges of the day. But the way that I do that is not that I just wake up and say, okay, with ease and grace, I'm going to rise to the challenges of the day. As I'm taking a breath in, I always tell, as I take it in, I say to myself with ease and grace. And then as I exhale, I will rise to the challenges of the day. And that way I'm centering myself before I even start my day. And so it's my way of kind of connecting myself to my breath, connecting myself to my person, and being able to kind of set my intentions for the day in a manner that allows me to move at a pace that works well for me. And so I included that here for you. But then I can also send that out if anybody has, and I have others that I've created that you're more than welcome to utilize if you would like to. And then also journal writing, gratitude and daily reflection. Just taking a moment during the day. What are 5 good things about my day? It kind of brings us, recenters us, with all the hustle and the bustle of the day, what's going on. Sometimes it's just good to kind of go back and be able to focus on all the things that are happening during the day. And so what are 5 good things about me, about my day that happened? And then any daily reflections that I wanted to kind of write down. Those are always good. That's something I kind of, sunflowers are my favorite. And so they kind of remind me of like the rays of the sunshine. And so that's what I use for myself in my little handy dandy journal. But you don't have to use a sheet like this. It could be a composition notebook that you kind of use, but just kind of, what are some things about yourself that, just kind of, what are your reflections of the day? What are those good things about your day? Just to kind of, before you go to bed at night, just having that moment, or as you're kind of slowing down during the day, just to give you a space to kind of reflect. And then we think about some organizational strategies. And with organizational strategies, I think it's important that we highlight organizational strategies. And the reason it's important to highlight it is because, again, we are a part of organizations, and that our organizational wellness is just as impactful to our individual wellness as our individual wellness is impactful and influential when it comes to our organizations. And so for organizations, creating holistic wellness programs, history has shown that wellness programs typically do not encompass a more holistic idea, but that it's more about, hey, go work out. So, we got these, gym memberships you can have, go work out at the gym, go to the doctor, call it a day. In reality, it's more than just going to the gym and going to the doctor. It's how are people working on their emotional regulation? What are strategies that we're utilizing within our employment, our organizations, to be able to promote wellness, but not just promote it, help others sustain their wellness. So like I've created the Mindful Monday practice, where me and my staff on Monday mornings, not just at SG Mental Health, but also at my other employment, we utilize this strategy. When we start our morning off on Mondays, that is what we do. So that's why I say I have more Mindful Mondays, because I've created a lot of them, and I typically try to create them in advance. But those are things that we do. We spend that time just working on that, just to focus on themselves. We have trainings that we involved in all of our trainings, incorporating some type of wellness activity in the training. And so it's not just that I talk about it and say, okay, but as organizational leaders too, we have to also be able to remind our staff that you have to be well, being able to check on them, cultivating this positive work culture where they understand that, it's okay to not feel well. And it's okay to say, today is that day that I need to kind of take care of myself. Being able to, encourage that, they are taking their breaks. They're not eating lunch at their desk and still working at their desk. They're being very mindful of how they're structuring their time on a day-to-day basis, encouraging them to find strategies that more providing them with trainings, others coming in to do trainings that are more wellness focused, that kind of promote different activities that they can do. Those are the kind of things that allows them to become more engaged, more empowered, being able to have flexible work policies. All of those kind of play into the organizational success when it comes to individuals' well-being. And so not just kind of the traditional idea of you come to work, you do your job, you go home, but we're making this a culture where we're talking about wellness. We're talking about, how are we taking care of ourselves? How are we going to take care of others? What are things that we can do? How can we incorporate it? Having a day where you're just doing nothing but wellness things. Sometimes you just need that break just to breathe. Having those moments, that's important. And so I always want to encourage, because I know for time purposes, we're a little right there at 3 almost. Oh my goodness. Being able to kind of do this moment of reflection, and reflecting on the concept of wholeness, as it not just relates to your goals and your aspirations, but also your sense of purpose, and start to think about what ways can you begin to cultivate a more integrated and fulfilling path forward in your life. not from a sense of just being well, but from a sense of becoming more whole. And so the takeaways ultimately is that embracing wholeness involves aligning your mind, your body, and your spirit, and that cultivating self-awareness is the key for you to be able to unleash your inner harmony, and not just unleash your inner harmony, but also nurture genuine connections that contribute to your sense of completeness, because being whole means there is this sense of completeness. And every day is not going to be a good day. Every day is not going to, you're not going to find that all of yourselves are going to be in tandem every single day. There are going to be days when you feel off, and that's okay, because sometimes we just need to recharge. Some days I don't want to be social with people. I want to be able to charge, and that's okay. That's a part of knowing who you are. That's where that self-awareness comes in. And so understanding that, but that understanding that prioritizing ultimately your well-being is essential, and your self-care is essential to your overall wholeness. Key point in all of this is that past traumas and wounds are so important to resolve, because as long as those scars are still open, or we're kind of scratching those wounds and reopening them, we can't move towards a sense of completeness in our life. We can't ultimately become whole and experience this state of wholeness in our life. Reflection, we've kind of talked about that reflection piece is so important, and practicing gratitude. But ultimately, to be whole is to be well, it's to be happy, it's to be optimistic, satisfied with your life experiences, and empowered. And I think I'm right at 3 o'clock, Justin. I feel like I ran through this. Like I need more time. We have to do like a whole like day of just activities or something, Justin, because I felt like I was racing. I was off to the races with this. So this is my information. If anybody wants to reach out, I am actually in the Tallahassee area. I just don't have my Georgia number, so you're more than welcome to call my Georgia number. I am a licensed, I didn't say all that, but I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia, licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida, and recently licensed in New Hampshire as well. I am a registered yoga teacher, breathwork teacher as well. So I do teach yoga individually, group sessions, things of that nature. And I do provide counseling services. And I'm also over at SG Mental Health if necessary and need me. So this is my information if anybody wants to reach out. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing and look at any questions, cares, comments, or concerns.
So it looks like we got some good feedback in the chat. We're going to be starting a series of office hours where we're going to be doing some small group stuff. So we'll definitely have you to do some stuff in person. We have a huge training room here in our space. And so for those of you on the call, stay tuned for that. For those of you that are going to see it via recording, know that that's coming, and we'll definitely be including Dr. Sapp, because we know that wellness, when you're doing this heart work, wellness and wholeness is super important. So
yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sapp.
Y'all are welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for having me. And like I said, we'll make sure that I know Justin has the links. He has access to the links. So if you want the links prior to, Justin can send you the links. Please feel free to reach out to him and or to LaShawn, because both of them have the links as well. I am perfectly okay with you having any of the material that I shared, as well as the breathing exercises as well. So feel free to use at any time and reach out at any time.
All righty. Thank you guys again. Thank you, Dr. Sapp. You all be safe. Seem like the weather may go downhill, and we'll see you soon.
All right. See you soon.
Bye.